If you found yourself at the crossroads where you're uncomfortable past familiar and you're beckoning, aligned, truth-seeking, truth-filled future are overlapping, this video is for you. I was witnessing this just last night. My wife had just started a new job back in the bar service industry, an industry that she has been out of for the more like 5 or 6 years now. And I could see it in her experience adapting back into that culture, knowing that she's moved far past that and yet having to revisit all of the sort of protocols of what you have to do when you're behind the bar, when you're involved in bar scene and alcohol culture and stuff like that. And I could see the turmoil beneath her smile almost. That sort of uncertainty, or maybe like there's some compromising that was going on, and maybe and I know I've experienced this for myself, a fear that you are repeating the past. Fortunately, this is not something to be as afraid of as you might be. This is something that we all deal with, and there's a lot that goes on as we come to our higher selves and deal with this sort of past drama, this past program that we have troubles getting out of. Every entrepreneur I know goes through dip-like phases like this, where, and by dip I mean where you go down, dark night of the soul, feeling stuck, all that stuff. We go through phases like this before we sort of reach our divine calling, if you will. So here's what to do if you're going through this. Before we get into it, my name is Drew McClellan. This is my channel. Thank you for watching these videos. Or maybe it's your first time here. Thank you for joining me. I'm here to help people become the leaders of their own lives. I believe that our way forward becomes much more apparent when we take responsibility and take accountability for what we do. And we are a continuous becoming of our higher selves, if we choose to. First thing that I've done when I've recognized that these overlapping pasts and futures are coming to a crossroads, butting heads maybe, is remember that it's important to center with your new self. And what exactly does that mean? We have an old program that we're conditioned to, that we try and break away from. We know that rewiring the mind is what it takes to start manifesting a life that we want, but how do we work with both of those things in tandem? It's most of us can't just flip a switch and then we're a new self. Working with those past programs, I see kind of similar to just updating your own software and devices. You know, I got a new computer over here maybe 6 months ago. I still run a lot of the same apps and software on this computer, yet the processing power is higher. In a way, the human body and the human mind, the human biofield, the spirit is the greatest computer we know, and it doesn't operate all that differently. We can have this program within us while recognizing there's a bigger mission outside of us, and recognizing our potential for higher processing power is within a greater field. That greater field can be discovered and cultivated while you're still kind of doing the rudimentary tasks that get you through the days, maybe get a little bit of money in your wallet and help you pay your bills in the old-fashioned way. It's all about making more room and discovering the capacity to build more that we're really trying to dial in. And that may mean some sacrifice, you know. This is, you have to, you generally know what you need to get rid of to make more room in your potential future. Now, does that always come easy? Definitely not. Does that always, you know, do you maybe have to give up some allotted time that you know has been wasteful anyways? Maybe it's stuff you already feel guilty about. That could very well be true, you know? I relate this always, probably annoyingly, to addiction and substance use. It's easy to want to sin, you know? It's easy to want to give into sex, drugs, and alcohol and kill time that way. I don't think a lot of us are that different. In the Western world, everyone's got something that they reach to for escapism. The next thing that I'd like to talk about is accepting humility. This is something that has come with a lot. It just comes with experience, because accepting humility is another way of saying, set your ego aside. And setting the ego aside doesn't usually just happen on a conscious decision. There's usually an ego death involved, and that can be brought on by a number of different things. For me, like one of the first times that I left my comfort zone of the city that I was living in Colorado, and I moved to California, I wasn't the hot shit that I thought I was. That was a big ego death for me and my wife and the few friends that I had that moved out there. It's a very humbling experience, and accepting humility is sort of what comes from that. Remembering that when you do accept humility, you often try and push, you often try and force things into existence, and not everything needs to be forced in every scenario. Sometimes, even in the creative aspects of making art or writing, a lot of people talk about how you don't always have to know what you're working on. In fact, even when you try and say, hey, this is the time that I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write on this song or my book or whatever it may be, that is when you get the most writer's block. Forcing that won't come in. Usually, I think that a good metaphor that I've heard from, perhaps it was Tom York, was that when he went out to California and he went surfing, which is a hilarious image if you know who Tom York of Radiohead is. Anyways, it's kind of hilarious to think about Tom York surfing at all. Maybe I'm getting this whole thing wrong, but the analogy is that the perfect wave doesn't just appear. You just have to, a lot of the game is patience and waiting for the wave to come. And that's a lot how the creative process works. That's a lot how your shift into higher consciousness works. And another thing along the lines of accepting humility, sometimes remembering that articulating your lack of knowing is better than reserving your lack of knowing. If you try to explain, even though you don't quite understand what you're explaining, that shows more courageousness than shutting off to the idea altogether, even if it's a very basic idea. I host a bingo night every Tuesday, and I just dropped the words for consolation prize. This is just last night. I lost the words for it, and I stumbled over myself, and I could not think of the word consolation. You ever have that happen to you where you just forget a word altogether? Anyways, trying to stumble through it and explain what I was talking about, I had some word salad that I threw at the bingo crowd, and then I just continued the game. And that alone is, it's whatever. I mean, I'd feel really dumb about it, actually, even talking about it now. But it's showing that you just put it out there that you are flawed like anybody else often is much more of a courageous act than, hiding away from it. You sort of hold that energy in if you pent it up inside of you. Something that you hear throughout your life, but really maybe don't sit and think about all that much, is taking the high road, or as I like to think of it, taking the high vibe road. Elevating your frequency is a big part of this whole game that we play in our spiritual awakening and just our personal development, and recognizing that there's a bigger, more divine essence to our authentic souls is part of this greater shift. Independence is a virtue. When you feel lost, or back to my wife's situation, when she's back into a bar scene again and it feels familiar, uncomfortable, seeing all these younger, hot-headed kids running their lives, their egos are really high, reminiscing about how that was you in the past, and just remembering that your independent stride brings and personality brings so much to the table, even when you're back in this environment of competing egos and what have you. You always have that to rely on. That can go a long way. This is even a practice with the camera for a lot of people, is just tapping into what their true conscious nature is and what do other people see them as. Who am I as an independent? We all use the power of assumption, even if we're not consciously aware of it, and attaching that desire with a committed action as well is something that often is only seen to the, here I am losing a word again, it's only seen to the user, the observer. Everyone looking in at you is not really witnessing this decision making going on, this action alignment with your goals and desires. There is tons of low vibe stuff out there. We've all been through paths of drama, and everyone has their own version of seeing shit get ugly. If you are behaviorally mature and if you are spiritually maturing, I should say maturing because it's more of a continuous process that we're doing. You probably have parents and even grandparents that are very immature people in some ways. So I say, if you are spiritually maturing and behaviorally maturing, you can recognize that. Let the low vibe stuff stay low and let it stay below you. Remember, at the end of the day, no one can tell you that you're doing it wrong besides you. So don't mug yourself.